You better be dead, bro.
I opened the door, and immediately as soon as I opened it, there was a puddle of blood on the carpet.
A friend of ours was dead in his bedroom.
You're the person who actually slit Mr. Alexander's throat from ear to ear.
Yes.
Everyone knows that love is a powerful thing, but what happens when something comes between two people who thought they would spend the rest of their lives together? Very quickly, love can turn into rage, and even a desire to get revenge. Could this rage be enough to cause someone to kill an individual that they once loved? Sometimes it can. This story tells the tale of 3 women who brutally and with calculation took the lives of their ex-boyfriends. Get ready because these stories are disturbing enough to rock you to your core. Jodi Arias was born on July 9, 1980 in Salinas, California, to William and Sandra Arias. She had a younger brother named Carl. She was a beautiful young girl who had a passionate interest in photography. She was known as a good girl and rarely got into trouble. From the outside looking in, she appeared to be happy and to have a healthy, normal childhood. But were things behind closed doors really as ideal as they seemed? She would later allege that her parents frequently abused her by hitting her with a wooden spoon. But this information wouldn't be brought to the surface until much later. The second most important person in this story is Travis Alexander. Travis was born in 1977, also in California, to Gary and Pamela Alexander. The beginning of his life had some challenges. His father died when he was only 11 years old, and his mother struggled with drug use. He would mostly survive off of ramen noodles and sometimes would go without eating at all. Eventually, he and his 7 siblings would be sent to live with his grandparents. When he got older and finished school, he ended up becoming a salesman and a motivational speaker. He was handsome, charismatic, and well-liked. Travis would end up meeting Jodi Arias in 2006 while they were both at a conference. He was 30 at the time.
The company was having a convention in Vegas, and it was a big deal, and so everybody was beating the drum. You got to go to Vegas, got to go to the convention.
Chris Hughes, Travis's friend and former coworker, recalls of the excitement leading up to the event. There was a lot of energy at these events. In one clip, you can hear a crowd cheering as Travis is announced to speak.
Welcome, Mr. Travis Alexander.
At the time, Jodi was actually committed to a long-term relationship, but they had been having issues. She wanted to get married, and her partner wasn't in the same place as her. Both Jodi and Travis ended up hitting it off and bonded over the fact that they were both practicing members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
After the banquet, Travis and her hung out until 4 o'clock in the morning, just talking and getting to know each other. And the next morning, he tells me that he's found his wife, and this is the girl that he wants to marry.
Before he said goodbye to Jodi, he urged her to read the Book of Mormon, as he was considering converting. It was only a matter of months before the two were officially dating, and they had both converted to the Mormon religion.
Travis actually baptized Jodi himself, and there's a picture of the two of them before the ceremony.
A legal expert commented. At the time, Travis's friends found the relationship to be moving rather quickly and to even be kind of toxic. They were especially concerned when Travis confided in them that he had slept with Jodi, despite having taken a vow of celibacy until marriage. He felt really guilty about it. His friends probably wondered at the time whether or not Jodi may have convinced Travis to do something he wasn't ready for. In this clip, Travis can be seen hanging out with a group of friends while Jodi lays her head in his lap. Travis can be heard telling a story animatedly while his friends listen, but Jodi, who was 27 years old at the time, does little to contribute to the conversation or interact with her boyfriend's friends. Travis's friends felt like something was a little off about their relationship. For one thing, Jodi was strangely over-comfortable with indulging in PDA.
For example, one night we're all in the hot tub. There's 4 of us, this is a time to chat and hang out. Well, Jodi is like climbing on Travis while we're trying to have this conversation.
She was all over him. I mean, like 8th graders whose parents are out of town, like straddling his lap and sucking on his neck, and Travis just kept pushing her off, and he's like, Jodi, get off me, like, what are you doing? And I look at Chris, I'm like, does she not realize we're sitting here?
At first, Jody and Travis seemed to be pretty happy, and they did share some good memories together. From traveling to riding in a hot air balloon, they seemed eager to experience the world.
They had a book called 1,000 Places to See Before You Die,
commented Michael Skoloff, who studied this case. They also knew how to have fun together, as is evident in this picture as Travis clings to Jody as she pretends to be about to fall off a mountaintop. They seemed to be in constant conversation with one another, and during the time they were together, they shared an incredible 82,000 emails with one another. But Jody was also extremely possessive of Travis, something that other people noticed.
She just had to sit right by him. She didn't appreciate when he was talking to another female. She didn't like the fact that if there was anyone that didn't know that they were together, she wanted to make that clear.
Jody was obsessed with Travis. She wanted to marry him and have kids with him, but Travis was put off by how quickly she wanted things to go. After all, they had only been dating a few months.
I love him so greatly that my love is bigger than even I can grasp,
she wrote in her journal. Travis's friends kept trying to convince him that Travis wasn't good for her. They were scared of Jody.
I'm afraid we're going to find you chopped up in her freezer.
Finally, Travis was beginning to see the things his friends did. He was sick of Jody's obsession with him, and he decided to call it quits after 5 months. Despite the fact that Jody and Travis were supposedly broken up, they continued to contact one another, and sometimes would even hang out. Eventually, Travis decided it was time to move on with his life, and he began to date a new woman. He went on dates with several Mormon women, but was most infatuated with a woman named Lisa.
Jody wanted to sabotage Travis's relationship with Lisa and scare her off.
She made Lisa's life horrible. She would knock on her door and run away. She would knock on the windows.
Jody, all the way in Arizona, would catch wind that Travis was dating someone new, and she became very angry. She was jealous of the fact that he had moved on. In order to get revenge, Jody slashed Travis's tires, but she didn't stop there. She was determined to keep Travis from dating anyone else but her. So she hacked into his Facebook account and canceled his dates. She even figured out the name of the woman he had been seeing and sent her a horrific message claiming to be Travis. It seemed as if she believed that if she couldn't have Travis, no one else should be able to have him either. At this point, Jody had turned completely insane and started to display some very disturbing behaviors. At one point, she even snuck into Travis's house while he was sleeping by entering through the doggy door. "You've hurt me so bad over and over again. You've made me want to die. You don't know what horror you've caused me," he wrote to Jody in a text message. At this point, Travis was seeing a whole new side to Jody. He realized that she was insane and possibly capable of killing him. In fact, he even once told his friends that he wouldn't be surprised if he ended up dead. He probably should have then assessed the situation, realized how much danger he was in, and called the authorities to get a restraining order against Jody. But for some reason, he didn't. In fact, he would even sleep with Jody from time to time, despite how crazy she was. In early 2008, Travis told some people that Jody was going to join him on a work-related trip to Cancun. This probably didn't make a lot of sense to people at the time since they were supposedly not together. But soon enough, later on, Travis would make arrangements to bring a different woman instead. The next part of the story is incredibly bizarre. It was May 2008, and a burglary occurred at Jody's grandparents' house, where Jody also lived. There were several items missing, with one of the most interesting being a .25 caliber automatic pistol. But who would have been looking to steal a weapon, and how would they have known where it was stored inside the home? Then the following month, Jody rented a car in Redding and used it to drive to Travis's home. It was there that they used a camera to take explicit pictures of themselves. Some of these pictures featured Travis in the shower. Things started to become a little suspicious on June 4th. Travis missed a very important conference call, something that was unlike him. His friend gave him a call later that day.
I said, T-Dog, you better be dead, bro. Yeah, like I was joking.
Meanwhile, Jody was acting a little sketchy. She went back to California and returned her rental car, but while she was on her way, she met up with some friends in Utah. Her friends believed that she was behaving a little strangely. She had dyed her blonde hair dark brown. She also had some new cuts on her hand that she couldn't explain how she got. As if that weren't reason enough to be concerned when she returned the rental car, the employee noticed that the car mats had been taken out. There were also some strange red stains. By June 9th, Travis's friends were getting really worried.
They keep calling Travis, but it's very strange. They can't reach Travis.
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic...
His phone just kept going to voicemail.
They feared something had happened to him, so they drove to his house. It didn't take long for them to realize something was incredibly wrong, but what they found was probably way worse than they could have ever anticipated.
At this point, my heart was pounding, just because I feared for the worst. I opened the door, and immediately as soon as I opened it, there was a puddle of blood on the carpet. And so as soon as I saw that, I walked past it. I looked down the hallway to his bathroom, and so I could see the blood all over the ground, all over the walls.
Zachary would end up making a horrific discovery. Travis was curled up inside the shower, naked. It was clear he had been dead for several days. Frantically and in a state of shock, Travis's friends called 911.
A friend of ours is dead in his bedroom. We hadn't heard from him for a while. We think he's dead. His roommate just went in there and said there's lots of blood. I didn't go in, but I can give you the phone to someone who went in there.
She then hands the phone off to a friend.
Hello. He's dead. He's in his bedroom.
Okay.
In the shower.
How did this happen? Do you have any idea?
No, we have no idea. Everyone's been wondering about him for a few days.
Police soon arrive on the scene, and they are astonished by the amount of blood everywhere. It was on the sinks, the walls, and the shower. It seemed as if there had been some sort of struggle.
It wasn't as though it was a burglary. It was somebody wanted to make sure that he was dead.
Travis's attack had been brutal. He was stabbed so many times that officials quickly lost count of how many wounds he had. There were gunshot wounds and stab wounds.
The wounds were not just numerous, they were devastatingly deep. I mean, his throat was from ear to ear.
While detectives tried to piece together how this could have happened, the news is starting to spread to Travis's friends that he's gone. Travis's friend, Chris, remembers the heartbreaking moment his life was forever changed.
He said, Chris, T-Dog's dead. And I remember just saying, almost like howling, no. And oh my gosh, how did this happen?
It was a shock. I couldn't feel anything.
Detectives combed through the house searching for fingerprints. They were looking for anything that might help them figure out who had been in Travis's room the night that he died. They soon made some strange discoveries. Not only had the killer washed the sheets from the bed right after killing Travis, but when investigators looked inside the washing room, they found the last thing they were expecting, a camera. They take out the memory card and decide to see if they'll be able to pull any pictures. While they're waiting for the pictures to be processed, police are gathering information from anyone who is close to Travis. Jody agrees to come down to the police station. She even agrees to be fingerprinted, but she denies being there the night Travis died. When the police do get the photos developed, they find pictures of both Jody and Travis in suggestive positions. The last photo is a picture of Travis in the shower. This is believed to be the last picture of him alive, but that's not all. Police get the results back from a bloody handprint they found at the scene of the crime. The DNA of the handprint matched the DNA of Jodi Arias. Jody is taken in for interrogation, and what she does there was enough to shock the world. Detectives wasted no time in getting right to the point.
I've talked to a lot of people, and everybody's pointing a finger at you.
They don't buy Jody's story that she was far away the night that the murder happened.
And do I believe that you had come to visit Travis? Yes. I truly believe it. Did you have the opportunity? Yes. You were traveling alone. There's no other witnesses. Your phone just happened to turn off from here to here.
They had also found a hair at the crime scene that matched Jody's, something she could not explain.
This is over. This is absolutely over. You need to tell me the truth.
Eventually, they bring up that that was stolen from Jody's grandparents' house. If it was determined that it was the weapon that had been used to kill Travis, Jody would look guiltier than ever. At one point, when Jody is alone waiting in the interrogation room, she seems to notice the security camera and looks directly at it. She then gets up and does a handstand against the wall. She also swings her hair around and even climbs under the table. She can even be heard laughing and singing at certain points. She was likely engaging in this bizarre behavior as a way to appear crazy. Eventually, Jodi was arrested and charged for Travis's murder. She pleaded not guilty. She would later change her story, claiming that she was there the night he had been killed, and the two identified men had come into the house and killed him while she ran for her life. She then changed her story yet again, this time claiming that she did kill Travis, but only in self-defense.
Would you agree that you're the person who actually slit Mr. Alexander's throat from ear to ear?
Yes.
Would you also agree that you're the individual that stabbed him in the upper torso?
Yes.
And you're doing all of this according to your version of events. You're doing this to this individual after you have already shot him, right?
Yes.
Correct?
I believe so.
After a dramatic trial, the jury eventually came to a decision and Jodi's fate was soon to be revealed. The court was filled with people, many of whom were very emotional, hoping for justice to be served.
Do find the defendant as to count 1, first-degree murder, guilty.
The court representative read, leading to cries of relief in the courtroom. The jury would also find that the murder was premeditated. It was finally time for Jodi Arias to face the music. Judge Sherry Stevens didn't hold back on sentencing day. When considering the sentence, the court considered several things. Jodi had clearly put a lot of time into preparing for the slaying. The crime was also incredibly cruel. Jodi did not try to help Travis after using both a knife and gun to brutally wound him. But that's not all. Jodi also destroyed evidence, lied to the police about what had happened, and caused irreparable harm to the lives of all those who loved Travis. Jodi was now potentially facing execution for her horrific crime. But that wasn't what the jury ultimately decided.
And that a natural life sentence is appropriate. It is ordered. The defendant shall be incarcerated in the Department of Corrections for the rest of her natural life with no possibility of parole,
Judge Stevens declared. At last, justice had been served. But was it really enough? Many people believed that she should have been given the death sentence. In an interview following the sentencing, Jodi claimed that initially she would have rather been dead than alive forever in prison. But she had changed her mind, something she stated in court.
But as I stand here now, I can't in good conscience ask you to sentence me to death.
Claiming she changed her mind for the sake of her family. Reporter Ryan Owens questions Jodi's decision to beg for her life.
You said today you want to give Travis's family closure. You know they want you dead, so why don't you give them that closure?
What do you mean by that? Why don't I myself? Is that what you're asking?
No, why don't you accept the fate of the death penalty if you know that's what they want?
I've caused them a lot of pain. I've caused my family a lot of pain. And I think that by asking for death, I'm only going to cause more pain to my family.
Jodi Arias, now 41, continues to live life behind bars at Arizona State Prison. Ezra McCandless was born in 1997 in Wisconsin to her mother, who was only 14 years old. Her name was originally Monica Kay, but when she got older, she decided to experiment with names and pronouns. There were times when she wondered if she was really a girl and not a boy. Around the summer of 2017, she was dating a 33-year-old man named Jason Mengel. Despite the fact that she was in a committed relationship, she couldn't help but take a second glance when she came across a 23-year-old barista and part-time substitute teacher named Alex Woodworth while she was in a coffee shop. The pair hit it off and she wanted to continue seeing him. She eventually decided that she wanted to identify as a girl and worked as an amateur artist. But things would get more complicated soon after when she would find out that she was pregnant with Jason Mengel's child. She ended up having an abortion and she began secretly dating Alex without telling Jason a thing. Ultimately, Ezra's decisions would lead to a crucial day in March of 2018. She would end up walking up to a random farmhouse in Eau, Wisconsin. She claimed she had been attacked and had a crude carving on her arm. The man who owned the house was Don Sipple, who ended up calling 911.
This is Don Sipple calling, and I have a young lady that just came to my house, and somebody attacked her, and she needs a doctor. Her clothes are all torn, and
Dawn tried to get as much information out of Ezra as possible, but she couldn't even tell him what her name was.
You don't know? she's in kind of bad shape. She says she don't know.
Eventually, when she was connected with the police, Ezra would say it was her ex-boyfriend, Alex Woodworth, who had done this to her. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Wasn't Alex the one that she was having the secret affair with? Yes, but let's just say that a lot happened from when she first met him until that fateful day. Let's look into exactly how Ezra would come to be romantically involved with Jason, someone who is 33 years her senior. The pair's relationship was moving rather quickly. After being together for only a short period of time, they were already discussing getting married. One of the places the couple chose to hang out frequently was a coffee shop. It was in fact this very coffee shop where Alex Woodworth worked. Alex was a kind, well-liked human being who enjoyed helping others. He was a self-proclaimed nerd whom his siblings loved. But according to Ezra, he was also very much into the BDSM lifestyle. Jason would eventually figure out about the affair and confront them. In the midst of all this chaos, Ezra just decided to break up with both of them. Jason is then out of the picture for just a little bit because he had to leave for military training. He was gone for only 2 weeks before he returns, and Ezra surprises him with very unsettling news. She claims that one of his friends assaulted her. Of course, he's shocked and disturbed, so he goes to the police to sort things out. To put things in perspective, this is 3 weeks before Ezra would show up at the farmhouse, disheveled and unable to explain what had happened to her. When police asked Ezra about what was happening that night, she seemed to have a hard time remembering and repeats herself often.
Wine and things, and I thought it would be okay to have some wine and just try to talk and try to understand what was going on. And then I got really, really, really drunk. Almost blackout drunk, and I was throwing up. And he had me go upstairs when I started throwing up, and he took me upstairs, and he put me in his bed, and I was throwing up. I just remember a lot of, I don't know, it's a big mess of a bunch of fumbling and stuff. It was awful.
Basically, what Ezra was suggesting was that after she got really drunk, this individual took advantage of her. But some things aren't quite adding up. Not only had Ezra sent some pretty suggestive text messages to this person, but had also gone back to sleeping with Alex while Jason was away, despite previously breaking up with him. This doesn't mean that she wasn't assaulted, but it was Alex's response when police asked him about the alleged assault. He said that Ezra told him that she had slept with another man, but that it was completely consensual and she just regretted it. So why make this story up now? Eventually, the charges were dropped, and Ezra moved back home to be with family. But her life was not complete. She wanted to be with Jason, but Jason, no longer able to trust her, didn't want anything to do with her. On March 22nd of 2018, Ezra unexpectedly showed up at Jason's favorite coffee shop, where he often hung out. Ezra's mood was odd.
I was like, oh, okay.
Did you notice anything about the defendant's demeanor that caused you concern?
She was a little fired up.
Ezra said that she was going over to Alex's house to show him some things, but Jason got a weird vibe. That evening, he decided to bike over to Alex's house just to make sure that everything was alright. When he got to Alex's house, he saw Ezra's car idling in the driveway. The keys were inside, but Ezra wasn't in the car, so Jason decides he's gonna go hang out for a little bit and keep an eye on things.
Well, I sat across at the, there's like a school across the way. I sat there, parked my bike, because I just was like, well, everything's probably fine. Everything's probably fine. You know, I wasn't sure for both parties involved that they should be alone.
But eventually someone sees him and makes a report of a suspicious person, so the police show up and confront him.
I mean, I'm a medic in the military, so like, I was paranoid. I was paranoid that someone was going to do something irrational.
Police speak with Ezra and Alex very briefly before deciding that there isn't actually anything wrong.
Yep, we're good to go. Everything's good.
An officer can be heard saying before leaving. But in fact, things inside that house were not good, and horrific events would soon occur. And just a few hours later, Ezra would show up at Dawn Sippel's house with ripped clothing and blood all over her. When the police took her in for questioning, she could not remember what had happened to her, and to make matters worse, Alex was nowhere to be found. After being unable to find Alex anywhere, police decided to go to Dawn Sippel's farmhouse and see if they could find any signs there. Sure enough, they find some muddy footprints that they decide to follow. The footprints led them to an abandoned car that they soon identified as Ezra's. It's what's hanging out of the car that disturbs them the most. It's a dead body in the back seat, and the police immediately realize that it's Alex. He's covered in blood after being brutally stabbed to death 16 different times. Soon after this horrific discovery, police go back to Ezra and inform her that Alex is dead and ask her if she knows anything about that. It's then that she decides to tell the story of what happened to her arm. She explained that she had questioned her gender in the past and even identified as a male at one point. As a way to terrorize her, she claims Alex carved the word boy into her arm. But police don't buy this story, and she eventually admits that she did it herself. She then moves on to a different story, this time saying that she and Alex had been sitting in the backseat of the car when he, armed with a knife, tried to take her clothes off and assault her. She says she begins fighting back and grabs the knife from Alex before using it to stab him to death. But details of her story just aren't making sense, and at this point, police no longer believe her. She's soon arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Over a year later, Ezra's trial began, and it shocked the nation.
Today, the trial is underway in a Dunn County murder case. Ezra McCandless is accused of stabbing Alexander Woodworth of Eau Claire 16 times in March of 2018. His body was found in a car in Springbrook Township between Eau Claire and Menominee.
There was a lot of news coverage of this event, especially locally. From the very beginning, Ezra claimed she killed only in self-defense.
What I recall my dad telling me, he told me many times, and he would always tell me, when you're in a situation with an individual or if someone's attacking you, that you need to do anything and everything you can to get away, to defend yourself. And he would tell me about, you can use knives, you can scratch, you can kick, you can fight.
She tells the court, defending her actions. She would eventually be asked about how the whole gender topic came up and how Alex felt in regards to how she identified.
Well, as our relationship progressed, I told him about how I identified in the past as almost strictly masculine. And he preferred that I presented myself in a masculine way. He often told me how confident I looked and how much he was attracted to me because he could call me a boy, his boy, and present that way.
Ezra says she let Alex kill her with a knife because she's afraid and thinks that if she doesn't let him, he may kill her. She then describes the fateful day Alex allegedly attacks her.
I can't get out of the car and he's still grabbing for me, and this is when I began to defend myself and stab Alex. At this point, when the knife is in my hand, I am trapped between the open door and the middle of the car, so where the console would be, or the seat.
People were really confused by how Ezra carried herself during the trial, especially in the beginning. She didn't seem scared or sad. It was almost as if she enjoyed the attention. And then there was the time when Jason Mengel was called in to testify, and you can see her outright smiling, clearly eager to see him after such a long time. The jury now had to decide. Did Ezra kill because she was defending herself in a violent attack? Or was it because she wanted to be with Jason so badly that she thought she had to take Alex out of the picture completely? It only took 3 hours before the jury would come to their decision.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Ezra J. McCandless, guilty of first-degree intentional homicide as charged in the information. And the answer to the special verdict question is yes, used a dangerous weapon.
Ezra appeared to be in a state of shock as the verdict was raised. She stared into the distance, but didn't cry. She didn't appear remorseful. When it came time for sentencing, Ezra had taken on a completely different look. Her curly brown hair had been chopped off, and instead of a pink blazer, she now wore an orange jumpsuit. And who do you think showed up to share some kind words for her? None other than old Don Sippel.
I didn't know what prompted me to do it, but I wrote Ezra a letter at the jail. And 3 weeks later, the 6th of December, she responded with a big brown envelope and a letter and 2 different pieces of art like I've never seen before. She drew them herself. That was the nicest art I've ever seen and one of the nicest letters I've ever seen.
He tells the court. For the first time, Ezra appears remorseful. When it's her turn to take the stand, she looks like she's close to tears.
The courts and Alex's family, but most of all, Alex's parents.
I want to say how sorry I am that they have lost their son. But sorry doesn't cut it in my mind. That word is not enough and never will be enough for this loss.
I am going to sentence Ms. McCandless to life in prison in the Wisconsin prison system. And I'm going to set the date that she would be eligible for petitioning the court for extended supervision at 50 years.
Ezra, now 24, continues to spend her days behind bars. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. This is definitely true in this case. This story is from 2009 and it takes place in London. 40-year-old Lakviv worked for a catering company and lived with her husband, Anukar, a man who was 17 years older than her. They had 3 children together. The couple were friends with a man named Lakimdar Chimna, who went by Lucky. Lucky was a married man himself, but when his marriage fell apart in the 90s, he went to live with Lakvir and Anukar for a while. At the time, he and Lakvir were still pretty young, only in their 20s, while Anukar was already in his 40s. Lakvir was an unhappy person. Her marriage had been arranged for her, and she had no love for her husband, who was at a completely different period of life than her. Before long, she and Lucky began engaging in a secret affair. Even after Lucky would move out of Lakvir and Anukar's residence, the affair continued. She would go over to his house almost every day to cook for him. On 2 different occasions, she would get pregnant with Lucky's baby, and at his request, she terminated both pregnancies. This was done in order to keep anyone from finding out about the affair. The affair continued for many, many years. You're probably wondering how these 2 kept things hidden all of the time. Well, you see, it wasn't as much of a challenge as you would think. Sadly, Anukar had cancer, so he was often in the hospital, sometimes in the UK, but also sometimes in India. Everything would change when Lucky met someone new. She was a beautiful young woman named Gurjeet Konal. She was only 21 years old and had arrived in the UK using a fake passport. The 2 were in love and got engaged very shortly after meeting. They announced that they would be getting married on Valentine's Day the following year. When Lakvir found out about this news, she was visiting family in India. It's safe to say she was absolutely heartbroken and was determined to stop the marriage. She started blowing up his phone with messages, trying to do anything she could to convince him to leave Gurjeet. She told him that the girl only wanted to marry him so she could become a legal UK citizen. When Lakvir returned home and saw Lucky with Gurjeet in person, she became even more enraged and even threatened to burn down Lucky's home. But nothing was going to stop his love for his fiancée. Lucky was renovating his home, planning his wedding, and even talking about starting a family soon after they were married. He was living a fairy tale. But everything changed temporarily when he became hospitalized with a strange stomach illness. He was treated and finally released to go back home where he continued life as normal. But then in January of 2009, things would change again, this time very dramatically. It was a normal evening and Lucky and Gurjeet were having a simple meal at home. They had microwaved some leftover chicken curry for dinner. Lucky decided to have an extra portion of the curry while Gurjeet went off to have a shower. Not long after he had eaten the curry did he begin to feel very unwell. Everything is going dark. I begin to feel dizzy, my face is numb. When I touch it, I can't feel anything, he said. Before long, he had lost vision and could not control his arms or legs. And then Gurjeet began to feel ill as well. They called for help, but an ambulance did not come, so Lucky's sister ended up rushing them to the hospital herself. When they got to the hospital, Lucky continued to get worse and worse until eventually doctors were unable to help him and he passed away. In the meantime, Gurjeet was put into a medically induced coma in hopes of saving her life. The hospital staff knew something suspicious was going on and ended up calling the police. When police visited the home, they took some of the food from the refrigerator with them to test it. When they did the tests on Lucky's body, they would make a startling discovery. Lucky had been killed by Aconite poisoning. It's known as being one of the worst ways to die, as the victim will go through incredible agony, all while their mind is completely clear. It's not long before the police linked the poison to the chicken curry the couple had consumed the night of the poisoning. But how did it get there? One of the couple's roommates claimed to have seen Locklear messing around with the curry in the kitchen the same day that the poisoning occurred. She was soon after arrested, after police found the poisoning in her handbag. Despite everything, Gurjeet managed to survive being poisoned. Locklear was charged with the murder of Lucky and attempted murder of Gurjeet. It would be determined that Locklear put a lot of time into planning the murder and had gotten the poison in India when she first found out that Lucky was engaged. It was also lucky that she had poisoned Lucky another time when he was in the hospital for a stomach illness. On top of that, while he was dying in the hospital, Lucky said that he believed she was behind his poisoning. Locklear was found to be guilty and was sentenced to life in prison. Thanks for watching, you guys. Hey, don't be shy. Give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more. You stay safe, and I'll see you next time.